As the 2026 US-Iran conflict intensifies, the Kremlin sees more than just a regional war. It sees a global opening. Under Vladimir Putin, Russia has adopted a strategy of opportunistic multi-alignment. By leveraging the crisis, Moscow aims to overextend American resources and increase domestic pressure on Western governments while keeping its own hands free for the front in Ukraine. Let's look at the main benefits of this approach. The first and most immediate benefit is a massive surge in oil revenue. With global crude prices hitting record highs of over $116 per barrel, Russia's war chest is being flooded with cash. This windfall effectively funds the ongoing military operations in Ukraine and stabilizes the Russian domestic budget despite Western sanctions. The second major benefit is strategic resource diversion. Every interceptor missile and intelligence asset the US sends to the Middle East is one less resource available for Ukraine. By forcing Washington to fight a two-theater logistical battle, Moscow gains significant breathing room on the European front, depleting the West's specialized weapons stockpiles. The third and fourth benefits target Western social and military influence. Russia actively exploits anti-war and anti-inflation dissent within Europe and the US to weaken political support for the conflict. Simultaneously, regional actors' fear of escalation has triggered a massive spike in demand for Russian air defense systems, like the S-400, boosting Moscow's defense exports. Finally, Russia uses the conflict to bolster its global image. By framing the US strikes as illegal aggression, Moscow positions itself as the defender of sovereignty against Western interventionism. This narrative resonates deeply across the global South, allowing Russia to lead a diplomatic coalition against what it calls Western hypocrisy. Now let's examine the negative impacts. Despite the gains, the opportunistic strategy carries severe risks. The first drawback is regional instability that could spiral out of control. If the conflict spreads to the Caucasus or hits Russian air bases in Syria, Moscow could find itself dragged into a direct shooting war it is currently ill-equipped to handle. The second and third drawbacks involve logistics and alliances. Tehran now expects direct military aid, such as advanced jets and missiles, which Russia desperately needs for its own front in Ukraine. Furthermore, the war in the Middle East complicates vital Russian trade routes through the Persian Gulf, threatening the very exports Moscow relies on for its economic survival. Finally, Russia faces two existential threats. A total Iranian collapse could create a dangerous nuclear vacuum or a wave of radicalization directly on Russia's southern border. Additionally, while high oil prices are a boon now, they risk triggering a global recession so severe that it could eventually crash global demand, causing oil prices and the Russian economy to collapse. Moving beyond the current strategy, let's analyze a far more assertive, if contradictory, approach. We move to the next scenario: Russia providing de-escalation support or tacit consent to the US and Israeli side. While seemingly counterintuitive, this diplomatic pivot would be a calculated gamble to trade Iranian interests for massive gains in Russia's primary theater, Ukraine. Let's look at the main benefits of this approach. The primary and most significant benefit is the creation of a massive bargaining chip. By offering strategic neutrality on Iran, Moscow could trade this concession for critical US and Western concessions regarding the Ukraine conflict, potentially freezing the front or easing weapons shipments to Kyiv. The second major benefit involves crucial regional security ties. This approach maintains Russia's delicate, high-level security relationship with Jerusalem, essential for managing conflict in Syria. Furthermore, aligning against Iranian expansion improves relations with powerful Sunni states like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, who also fear a nuclear-armed Tehran. The fourth and fifth benefits are focused on economic relief and long-term stability. This stance offers a theoretical, though unlikely, path to easing crushing Western financial sanctions. Most importantly, by preventing a total regional war, Russia successfully shields its own southern underbelly, the Caucasus, from destabilizing refugee crises and cross border conflict. Now let's examine the negative impacts. However, the costs of such a pivot are immediately catastrophic. Choosing this path doesn't just alienate a partner, it dismantles a core pillar of Russia's current military supply chain, directly threatening its performance on the Ukrainian front. The first drawback is the immediate loss of Russia's key drone supplier. Choosing this path destroys the no limits strategic partnership with Iran, cutting off the critical supply of Shahed drones and missiles that Moscow relies heavily on for strikes in Ukraine. This loss directly weakens Russian military capabilities at a crucial moment. A second significant consequence is enabling American hegemony. A quick, decisive US/Israeli victory would immediately embolden Washington. The Biden administration would be free to refocus America's entire military and intelligence apparatus directly back onto Russia, neutralizing Moscow's primary strategic diversion. Finally, Russia faces two devastating non military fallout scenarios. Domestically, supporting the West would be nearly impossible to explain after years of fierce anti NATO rhetoric. Internationally, this move is a reputational death blow, as Russia would be seen as an utterly unreliable ally by other non Western partners, from Beijing to Cairo. Moving beyond the current strategy, let's analyze an extremely assertive, escalatory approach. We move to the next scenario: Russia forming an active military alliance with Iran. While this direct confrontation with the United States seems extreme, for Russia, it offers a dramatic list of potential strategic, military, and long term geopolitical rewards that would redefine its global role. Let's look at the main benefits of this approach. The primary and most significant benefit is the strategic draining of the West. This approach turns Iran into a second front that could actively bankrupt the US military budget. Washington, already overextended, would be forced to split its limited high tech weapons and financial resources between two massive conflicts. The second and third major benefits involve vital military logistics. First, a full alliance ensures a continuous, high volume flow of Iranian Shahed style tech and missiles for the war in Ukraine. Second, this real world battlefield data provides Moscow with priceless intelligence on exactly how advanced US weapons perform when engaging Russian origin defense systems. The fourth and fifth benefits are long term geopolitical victories. First, this shared defense anchors the anti Western BRICS bloc through shared blood, solidifying Russia's leadership of a parallel global order. Finally, Russia definitively becomes the gatekeeper of Persian Gulf security, controlling the most vital energy transit routes on the planet. Now let's examine the negative impacts. We must transition from the benefits to the extremely severe costs. Active military support isn't just risky. For Russia, it is potentially existential. The strategic rewards of an alliance come at a catastrophic domestic and military price. The first drawback is immediate military overextension. Russia simply cannot afford to fight a two front war, balancing Ukraine and the Middle East simultaneously. The second major risk involves unexpected retaliation. A furious Israel could begin sending its lethal, high tech weaponry directly to Kyiv, instantly upgrading Ukraine's capabilities and neutralizing Russian advantages. A third severe consequence is direct escalation with the United States. This scenario exponentially increases the risk of a direct conventional clash between Russian forces and the US Navy. Furthermore, a new wave of severe secondary sanctions would further isolate the Russian economy from remaining neutral Asian markets, like China and India. Finally, the scenario ends in profound domestic instability. Russia risks radicalizing its own large Muslim population if the conflict in the Middle East turns overtly sectarian. This potential for massive internal Islamic unrest makes a stable, unified home front an inescapable casualty of a failed external alliance. Finally, we must examine a strategy of calculated restraint. We move to the next scenario, Russia adopting a position of strict neutrality and assuming a mediation role. In this model, Moscow attempts to transcend the conflict, positioning itself as a vital diplomatic bridge while shielding its own military assets from the chaos of the Middle East. Let's look at the main benefits of this approach. The primary benefit is positioning Vladimir Putin as the great broker, the only global leader capable of talking to Washington, Tehran, and Jerusalem simultaneously. This strategic conservation of power keeps all Russian troops and hardware focused exclusively on the Ukraine front, ensuring no resources are wasted on a distant theater. The third and fourth benefits focus on safety and market flexibility. By staying neutral, Russia avoids being blamed for the inevitable destruction regardless of the war's outcome. Furthermore, it allows Moscow to act as a black market hub, maintaining the flexibility to sell goods to both sides or facilitate back-channel trade that bypasses international eyes. The fifth benefit is internal stability. This approach keeps the Russian public focused on domestic goals and the special military operation in Ukraine, rather than a confusing and distant war in the Middle East. By refusing to intervene, the Kremlin prevents the conflict from becoming a polarizing issue that could trigger unwanted domestic debate or unrest. Now let's examine the negative impacts. However, neutrality often breeds irrelevance. If Russia fails to support Iran in its hour of need, Tehran may permanently turn to China as its sole protector. This would effectively end Russia's influence in the region, leaving it with no say in the post-war energy or security architecture. The second and third drawbacks involve passive losses. A U.S. victory could happen regardless of Russia's stance, but by staying neutral, Moscow receives no Ukraine trade or concessions in return. Russia faces a worst-case scenario where its rival wins and it receives absolutely nothing for its good behavior or lack of interference. A fourth consequence is the security gap. Neutrality does not provide an automatic shield against the side effects of war. Russia would still face the risk of cyber attacks on its infrastructure or spillover drone strikes targeting its military bases in Syria. Being a non-combatant offers no real protection in a high-tech, modern conflict. Finally, the scenario risks projecting an image of profound weakness. On the world stage, this refusal to act might be perceived as Russia being too exhausted or too weak to influence global events outside its own borders. This perception of decline could embolden both Western rivals and regional partners to disregard Moscow's interests entirely. To conclude, Russia is currently positioned in an aggressive sweet spot. It stands as the only major power explicitly benefiting from both the record energy prices and the diversion of crucial American attention. However, this is a dangerous, high-stakes countdown. Moscow's complex strategy is to keep this regional fire burning just enough to exhaust the United States, without ever letting the unpredictable flames reach the Kremlin's own doorstep.